Beginning of the week, when I was thinking about the fact that I was doing the sikha this week, I had one sikha plan, and then as the week went on, I changed my mind. I'm going to do some of my original plan. My original plan was to talk about davening, but there's another issue that I think was very present in the yeshiva this week. My apologies to the Shonabek guys. We discussed this earlier in the week. There's something that happens when people will spend time in yeshiva. And it happens for different people at different times. And different people with different levels of severity. Which is that you hit points in time, during your time in yeshiva, where... Kiva, you okay there?
Yeah.
Put it away.
All right.
Hit different times, different time periods during your time in yeshiva, where it's a real grind and it's real difficult. And it's like another day, getting up and getting through it and going through the schedule, and it's hard. It's grueling, and this is made worse by the fact that not every day when you're in yeshiva do you feel the progress. There are days where you feel like, what am I doing here? And I don't really get it. And other people are progressing around me and I'm not. Or just like, it's heavy. And the whole thing feels heavy and the whole thing feels tiring and the whole thing is like, what am I doing here? And we're not just coming out of vacation, but this man's also, there's a lot of it ahead of us. And so I'd like to talk about this phenomenon. It's written about in Sfarim. It's well known. It's also a well-known idea in psychology, not just in Torah and in Judaism. And I think this is the time in the year where I start to feel it. Rav Shlomo Wolbe was the author of Ale Shur, which is a great book of Musar, published a few decades ago. He passed away a couple of years ago. He was one of the Gedolei Hador, lived in Israel for most of his life, and would speak about Musar. Musar is ethical development, personality development, in a lot of different yeshivas. And Musar has a kind of bad name. People tend to think of it as like being told that you're garbage, or being told that, no, or when you use the expression giving Musar, it usually means to tell someone off. But that's not really what Musar is. Musar is really about getting to know yourself and about character development, especially Rav Wolbe's Musar, which is extremely deep. And Rav Wolbe has it's not even 2 pages, it's a page and a bit on this idea, on this problem. So I'd like to share with you what he says here and discuss a little bit this experience and what we can do about it. He says that whenever you anyone who spent time in yeshiva is very familiar. Would you come closer? Anyone who spent time in yeshiva is very familiar, he says, there are times of growth, times where it's awesome, times where it's great, we're like, wow, that was amazing. Especially if you learn something really exciting. I had a charusa today with Yosef that was just like mind-blowing. We were both almost dancing by the time we finished. No, literally. I don't like dancing. But there are times that are very inspiring, times that are very enjoyable, and very successful, and where we feel like, wow, this is great. I learned new things, and I can do things I wasn't able to do before. And then there are times in yeshiva where he says, where everyone around you seems to be getting it, you're not getting it, everything's difficult. It's hard socially getting along with people. It's the same people all the time. And there's tensions, and you feel suffocated, and nothing seems to be working. And he then, after he introduces the idea that way, Rav Wolbe then brings an extensive quote from a book called Sefer HaYashar. Sefer HaYashar is a very old book. It's about a 700-year-old book. It's a Musar Sefer from the era of the Rishonim. It's by an anonymous author. Many of the Musar Sfarim from that era had anonymous authors. So we don't really know who wrote it. But in the Sefer HaYashar, many centuries before the field of psychology existed, the author of the Sefer HaYashar describes this. And he doesn't describe it in terms of Torah, he describes it in terms of life, in terms of all experiences in life. And he says, any time a person gets involved in anything, and this is the part of the Sikha that will help you, not just in yeshiva, but it will help you in everything you do in life. So listen carefully. Any time you get involved in anything in life, a job, a relationship, a hobby, anything a person gets involved in life, they have a motivation to do it. And presumably they have some sort of pleasure or benefit from doing it. Usually some sort of pleasure involved in it. You take up a hobby, you like doing it. You want to study something in school, oh yeah, I want to study that. Oh, I want to go to yeshiva. Whatever it is, a relationship. Get involved with something. You get, everything a person gets involved in life, they have some motivation to get involved, and they get involved in it. And for a while, that motivation keeps them going. And it's in the natural course of things, says the Sefer HaYashar, it's in the natural course of things that that initial motivation, no matter how much you enjoy something, there's going to be a time where you're not going to want to do it. Where you're not going to enjoy it. You're not going to feel like it. It could be like, you know, it's a musical instrument. There's going to be times you don't want to practice, you don't feel like doing it. And then that will pass. If you actually enjoy the thing, and you actually have benefit from it, that will pass, and the motivation and the enjoyment will come back. And that's the way life goes. And the extent, how much you enjoy the thing and how much value you see in it, could make the periods that you're happy with what you're doing longer, and the periods where you're unhappy shorter. But when you're in those periods where you're unhappy, your mind plays tricks on you. And you could end up thinking, well, maybe I don't really like this. Maybe this isn't really what I want. And what happens is people, instead of realizing that this is part of the natural flow of everything, they start questioning themselves and doubting, and that could make the period of not liking what you're doing longer. You get into a negative momentum. Or in that negative period of time, those days where it's not working, a person could start really questioning themselves and make a dumb decision. Like stopping everything. Dropping it. Breaking up with the person. Whatever it is, depending on relationship, job, yeshiva, that ends up having consequences, and all because of some negative momentum. So, Sefer HaYashar says, first of all, a person has to realize this is the way life is. There's ups and downs, no matter what it is. A person could love their career, there's days they don't feel like going to work. Doesn't matter. There are going to be days they don't feel like going to work. But if they allow themselves to get tricked and think, maybe I actually don't like this job, then it could lead to all kinds of negative things. One has to realize that this is the natural ebb and flow. And in a situation where there's a tension, because sometimes you are doing the wrong thing in life. In a situation where there's tension, well, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, and then sometimes it's good again, and then sometimes it's bad. And see, at that point, the seichel, the mind, the intellect has to step in. What does that mean? If you're in yeshiva and you know you're going through and there's good periods of time, you got here, wow, this place is great, you're enjoying the classes, and then it's like you get into the grind, and there's days that aren't so successful, and you start doubting yourself and doubting why you're here and doubting what you're doing. And then maybe there's another couple good days, and you go through these periods. During those periods of doubt, periods what Rav Wolbe calls days of hate and despair. You don't like anybody, you don't see anybody. It is a suffocating experience being in yeshiva in a way. says that at that point your seichel has to step in. That's what the sefer is. You have to sit there, you know, go for a walk over to the picnic benches over there or something, and remind yourself, have your brain step in, because your emotions are going up and going down all the time. Your mind has to step in and remind yourself, this is why I made this choice. Wait a second. There's a reason I chose this. There's a reason this yeshiva, relationship, job, schooling, whatever it is, there's a reason I chose this, there's a reason it's good. When I made that decision, I made it with a clear head. I didn't have all the emotional ups and downs when I made the choice before I got here to do this. The reasons I made that choice still stand. And let me remind myself that, and remembering, of course, that this is a natural ebb and flow. It also says that it's very important during those periods of time to not be too hard on yourself. If you're having one of those days where nothing's working, or as my students often like to say to me, in the language of your generation, I'm not feeling it, Rabbi. If you're having one of those I'm not feeling it days, just realize that that's part of it, and that it'll pass, and it's normal. So that's one thing I wanted to get out. The days of hatred and despair, the days that are difficult. Now, you may not be feeling them now, and you may be saying, what's this rabbi talking about? I love yeshiva every second of it's awesome. Great. Good for you. I'm happy. Forget everything I said. No. It'll happen. You will have days like this. You'll have days where you're doubting yourself. And it's in everything in life. Like I said, if you're not going to feel it this year, great. You're on cloud nine. Well, you're wonderful. Things will come up in life. Life is big. It's difficult. It's not so simple. And remember this as a rule. That the decisions that you make, as long as you make them with a clear head, you have to respect them later on when you're on the emotional roller coaster as you're going through them. You have to respect those decisions because you made them with a clear head, you made them for a good motivation. Now, of course, you could make mistakes in life, and if the periods of hatred and despair start to get a little too long, it may very well be that you actually made a bad decision. It requires evaluation. But it's important to remember that there is this natural ebb and flow, and hopefully that'll help us. That helps us. Just awareness of it sometimes can help us get through some of the tough weeks. Now, I don't want people to over the next few weeks when I go and wake people up because they're not where they're supposed to be. So they say, "Oh, Rabbi, I'm in one of those hatred and despair times. You know, they got to leave me alone here. You know, they got to kind of comfy in bed." No, that's not the best way about it. And this leads into another aspect of this topic that I want to talk about. As you guys know well, we're coming near the end of the part of the Sikha where I have apologized to the Shana Bet guys who already heard all this from me already. I'm talking still more to the Shana Aleph guys. In about a minute or so, we'll move into this thing. It's fresh for everyone. I push people hard. I'm a confrontational person. Every time I've ever been offered a job teaching girls, I've turned it down because I know that it would be a disaster and they'd probably be crying and hate me. That's the way I am. I'm a confrontational person. When Rakan and I were learning Kollel, Rakan and I were chavrusas many years ago when we were in Kollel, we would scream and yell at each other and even occasionally come to blows. I'm a confrontational person. And I'm not afraid to say what I feel needs to be said and to push people. And please, do not misunderstand me. Do not misunderstand me. I'm not mean. I'm not rude. I mean, maybe I am rude. I care about each and every person here, and all I want, the guys who know me well know this well, all I want is for people to maximize their potential. So if I push you, and I'm confrontational, and you say something and I fight, that's part of, it's like the coach who tells you to do another 10 push-ups. And you hate him, right? So just please learn to live with me. But know that I know what this year is like. And I know how easily time can get away from people. And I know every year there are people who are depressed in April, in May, in June, because they blew it, and they didn't use their year well. Every year there are people like that. The guys who are trying to bet probably remember guys from last year who were like that. And it is depressing. And it's pathetic, and it's a failure. And every year, I work hard to make sure that no one feels that. To try to help them. Not always successful, as I just said. To get you guys to a point where it is productive, and it is good, and the end of the year, as hard as it was, and as hard as you got pushed, and you got yelled at, or you got reprimanded, or whatever it is, that it was all part of getting you where you need to be. So, while you're in those days of the grind, I'm still going to be there, you know, with the whip. So, let's just put that out on the table. Now I'd like to get to an aspect of the grind, which is really my original plan of what I was going to talk about, which is davening. Davening is a very, very difficult thing, especially Shabbos. It's a very difficult thing. And I don't mean opening up the siddur and reading the words. I mean connecting to it. There's probably no aspect of Jewish life that is more of a challenge for us in the modern age, where we have so many distractions, and where the world around us is less religious than it was 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. So the culture in which we're raised is less attuned to spirituality, and concentration is more difficult for us because of the way we're raised. And the whole connecting to God, and the language is foreign. There's a lot of obstacles to having good tefillah. One of the obstacles that we have to tefillah is the fact that we like to sleep. It's a real obstacle. I'm not kidding. I know it's funny I say this. It's an obstacle. It's an obstacle to tefillah. People like to lie in bed. It was probably easier to get up at the crack of dawn before electricity, where most people just went to bed when the sun went down because there was just a few candles around. You could read by the candlelight, but pretty much life shut down when the sun set. In the modern age, we're functioning till deep into the night, and physiologically, people at your age, the body clock likes to be up late at night. And that's why people in the age you're in, 17, 18, 19, 20, into the mid-20s, people like to stay up late. They have no problem staying up late. And many of you here stay up late every night. It's just a natural course of things, people your age. And then you get woken up at 7 o'clock, and you went to bed at 1 or 1:30 or 2. And if you're getting 5 hours of sleep a night, you are just not going to function properly. Davening takes a big hit. It's a big hit. It's hard to concentrate. It's hard to get up for. It's hard to be motivated for, that's for sure. And so now, for the thing to do its job, which is to connect to God and build a relationship to God, what prayer is supposed to be, forget about that. It's just getting there and getting the tefillin on and saying the words and participating is enough of a challenge. To actually have some sort of, like we all thought, yeah, it's supposed to be like meditation, and you're supposed to be focused, and you think about every word. People are falling asleep at the tables. So first let's talk about sleep. Getting a hold of your sleep schedule is a big priority. It's still early enough in the year that, what I'm talking about is grind. It's early enough in the year that you can still make changes to your routine. But there's a lot of people here who need to get a hold of their sleep schedule. You need to be getting to bed at a reasonable hour, and it's hard. Like I said, you like to stay up late. Fine. Take an hour nap in the afternoon. It does wonders. Yeah, it's true. A lot of people tell me I feel more tired after a nap. It's true. Always. If you have a good nap, right when you wake up, you will feel more tired, even maybe for the next half hour or so. But a few hours down the road, it really, really pays off. So if you need to, take a nap in the middle of the day, there's a nice big 2.5-hour break in the middle of the day. Plenty of time to fit a nap in there. Getting a hold of your sleep schedule is very important. There's another issue with sleep that I wanted to focus on. And that is, there is an evil, evil concept, an evil, evil invention that was invented I remember when the first ones came into existence. So it can't be that long ago. Probably in the late 70s, early 80s. Called the snooze button. It's actually evil. You may think I'm kidding. I might be kidding in how extreme I mean, but it's actually a negative, immoral thing, the snooze button. It actually is. It's bad. Let me explain what I mean. Sleep is restful. Sleep is restful for the body. It gives you energy. Provided, you guys should know this, right? Provided that you enter into a state of REM sleep. You're aware of that? If you go to sleep and you don't enter into cycles of REM, your body will not be rested. Is everyone aware of that? You know what I'm talking about? REM, rapid eye movement sleep, the deeper sleep, right? You go through sleep cycles. It takes a while to go into a cycle of REM sleep. Okay? You can't just go into a cycle of REM sleep. Well, there are people who train themselves to be able to go in easily. When you wake up in the morning, you're woken up, the alarm goes off, and you hit the snooze button and fall asleep for another 10 minutes, there's no way you're going into any sort of REM sleep. And if you are, it's momentary. There's no one in this room who believes for a moment that if they spend an extra 10 minutes in bed, they will be less tired the rest of the day. Oh, I got 6 hours of sleep yesterday, but today I got 6 hours, was woken up and then fell back asleep for 10 minutes. So now I'm more rested, I'm less tired, I can function better. It's idiot, it's nuts, it's stupid. You're not more rested because you fell back asleep for 10 more minutes. If a snooze button was going back to sleep for 2 hours, it might be unproductive to your day, but at least in terms of sleep it would make some sense. What is the whole concept? It's a concept built on a human failing. The snooze button was invented to feed a human failing that has no value. And that human failing is, and all of us feel it. I feel it every morning just like every one of you. When you wake up in the morning, the alarm goes off, oh, you want to stay in bed. Everyone does. Every normal, healthy human being, except like 6- and 7-year-olds who like jump out of bed. I mean, our age and older, everyone wants to stay in bed. It's comfy. It's nice. We want to stay in bed. We like being asleep. We don't want to wake up. We're tired. Everyone does. So the snooze button, what does the snooze button do? It allows you that pleasure of staying in bed with no benefit. The only benefit is the benefit of the moment of staying in bed, and there's actually a loss, a tremendous loss that comes from that staying in bed, which is that you end up having to rush or being late, or both. What did you? And you're no more rested. You end up having to compromise something. A person's, let's say, I'm not talking about, let's say, Jews who have to go to davening, but let's say someone who's not Jewish. They just get up, they get dressed, they eat breakfast, they go to work. Are they going to have as nice and as quality a breakfast, shower, drive, if they're rushing? And they're not going to be any more rested because they hit the snooze button. It makes no sense physiologically. I don't think there's anyone here who would believe that if you got an extra 8, 9 minutes, 10 minutes, usually you don't even fall asleep actually in that time between the snooze button and the next time it rings. You don't even fall asleep for it. And if the whole thing is, well, I like the experience of falling back asleep and hitting the snooze button, so I'm going to set my alarm half an hour earlier and then hit the snooze button 3 times and then I'll get up at the right time. That's what I do. All you did now was rob yourself of half an hour of good sleep because you cut off all your sleep cycles half an hour earlier in order to actually not get any proper sleep. So now you actually are going to be more tired. And the whole thing's ridiculous. There's no way to use the snooze button in a way that actually will make a person better rested. And the only thing the snooze button does is give you less time in the morning to do whatever it is you have to do, because you set your alarm for the time that's appropriate to wake up. You don't set it for earlier. If someone could tell me the actual value of the snooze button, other than what I've said, I'd be happy to hear it. I'd be happy to be... Maybe there's something I didn't think of that the snooze button does. But I've thought a lot about this, as you can see. I'm nuts. I thought about this. The snooze button is evil. And even if you don't have an alarm clock with a snooze button, the equivalent of the snooze button is when you're woken up and you say, oh, I'm just going to lie in bed for 10 more minutes. What are you doing? It produces nothing. It's not even like having an extra plate of food that is not healthy. Like, it's like if you fill up more, you have a few more bites. You're not even having a few more bites. It's like you're looking at food for 10 more minutes. You're not doing anything. It's not sleep. And think about it. Like when you're woken up here by a madrich. Let's say you woke you up and you got up and you got dressed and you came in and it was 7:25 when you walked in the base of measures. You got your tefillin on, which we'll get to in a moment. The importance of that. And you'd be at davening on time. And you're like, well, you know. But if you like rolled over to get more comfortable, so now you're walking in late. And you're playing that whole catch-up game, and you're sort of like, and you know, and I give you this look, and like, it's, what do you, why? And you don't get any, and there is a real satisfaction. Anyone who, like, you know, when you have one of those days where like you did everything right and you came to davening on time, and it was like, there's a real satisfaction you have as you go through a day like that, where like, you did what you were supposed to do. So you're giving up on that to roll over in bed for this. It's so dumb. We all do it. I do it too. Like I want to say, maybe you know what? Actually, I could get, you know, the clothes I'm wearing today. I'm actually like I know exactly where they are. I'm not even gonna have to look for socks. So like I could actually lie in bed another minute, and you know still make it. We all do this. I do this too. Everyone does this. But it really is no value if you think about it. It's really just like this silly little desire. I'm not even. It's not. Because it doesn't get us anything. It doesn't get us anything. Anyway, I just wanted to put this on the table that like when you're woken up, get up and go is much more useful, even though and it's a difficulty. It's such a funny Yetzer Hara because it's a Yetzer Hara that actually like what if we think about the Yetzer Hara as like, you know, in the classic sense, like, you know, the Yetzer Hara is this guy trying to convince you to do things. What's he selling you here? What exactly is he selling you on? So you guys have heard me say many times, the Yetzer Hara always thinks about the moment. This is the ideal example. Because there's zero payoff at all. Long term. Zero. You're not going to be better rested. The only payoff is like the enjoyment of that next moment. Because as soon as you get up, then you're going to be like, oh, now there's a line for the bathroom. Nothing good comes from it. Anyway. Snooze button. So that's the first point that relates to davening. Relates to sleep. Now, another point that relates to sleep, before we get into specifically davening issues, another point that relates to sleep is this issue of being tired. People are tired. Everyone's tired. Everyone is tired. Your parents, mother and father, are they both tired? Yeah, they're tired. Your mother and father, they're tired? Yeah, they're tired. Everybody's tired, guys. I'm tired, my wife's tired. Walk down the street, see people walking around, see people in the stores, doing their jobs. They're all tired. Everyone's tired all the time. Talk to you, you're tired? Yeah, man, I'm tired. Wait till the weekend. People are tired. You're tired. When people aren't being effective, they're not coming to shir, they're not coming to davening, Rabbi, I'm tired. Okay. So's everybody. Except like 7 and 8-year-olds. And like maybe athletes who like are really good cardiovascular, like, you know, there are people who aren't tired, and if you exercise, you'll actually have more energy. Those of you who don't exercise should. Parenthetical comment. You'll get sick less. You'll be less tired. But the fact is, everyone's tired. People function tired. Everyone. All your parents. Like you think about your parents. Like, you know, when your dad comes over, he's tired. Of course, they're all tired. Is there anyone here whose parents aren't tired? Everyone's tired. So get over it. Get over it. Oh, I'm so tired. Oh, you know, I'm just gonna not do anything today. What do you mean? That's how you're going to live your life? You're not going to get anything done in life because you're always going to be tired. You're going to be tired every day of your life. Get ready for it. You're tired. There might be a periodical time, maybe like one time you go on vacation, you really slack. There might be like a day, half a day maybe, where you're not tired. It'll happen in life. It'll be nice. But get ready for it. You're pretty much going to be tired from here on in. So let's deal with that. Okay? We've dealt with snooze buttons. We've dealt with the fact that everyone's tired. We haven't done any Torah yet, but we'll get there. Now, the Torah component, and soon we will also have a gratuitous tie into the Parsha, which of course we should have, because, you know, it's the right thing to do when you give a shmooze to tie it into the Parsha somehow, so, you know. The Rambam in Hilchos Tefillah talks about things that you have to have in as part of your davening. They're ma'akev, you must have as part of your davening. He talks about you have to have your hands have to be clean, like washing your hands. You have to be in a clean place. It can't be a place that reeks of anything disgusting. He gives a number of things. And the last thing he mentions is kavanah halev. You have to have kavanah. If you daven without kavanah, you didn't daven. Yikes. Kavanah is hard. Knowing the words. Well, thankfully, Reb Chaim Brisker, Reb Chaim Soloveitchik, heard of him? Chaim Brisker, lived in the 1800s, died in the beginning of the 20th century. He was the grandfather of the Rav Soloveitchik. Reb Chaim Brisker came up with, he said something that's very important about tefillah that we should all know. He says there's two types of kavanah. There's two things we mean when we say kavanah in davening. You have to have kavanah. What does the Rambam mean when he says you have to have kavanah? Two things that we could mean. One is knowing what the words mean. That's a form of kavanah. Terush hamilim. The second thing that we mean when we say a person has to have kavanah, and here's where I think this is something we can all handle, is the awareness and intention to daven. The awareness that you are davening to God. I'll give you another example of a different mitzvah that could help you get your heads around this. Like, if I say, let's say, when you shake a lulav and esrog, you have to have kavanah. So that could mean that there's some sort of like idea about the lulav and esrog I'm supposed to be thinking about, or it could mean that when I pick up the lulav and esrog, I'm supposed to be doing it with the knowledge and intention that I'm fulfilling the mitzvah of picking up the lulav and esrog, which pretty much we usually have. Why else would you be picking that thing up? You know, like when you pick it up, you know, before Halo on Sukkah, like that's your intention, is to fulfill that mitzvah. So that's kavanah, right? So the same thing with davening. Says Reb Chaim, kavanah in davening, the minimal kavanah in davening is that, like when you drag yourself into here and you put on your tefillah, why are you doing that? You're doing that because you intend to stand before God and daven. Right? Sounds simple? Good, that's kavanah. So you have to have kavanah. What's odd is that the Rambam, when he describes kavanah, says something very different. So he lists the 5 things that tefillah needs, and then later on in the parak, this is in the 4th parak of Hilchos Tefillah, parak in Aleph Ted Vav, he finally gets around to talking about kavanah. And he says the following, he says, Kavanat halev ketzad. What is kavanah? How do you do it? Ketzad means how. Like, how do you go about having kavanah? So he says, and then he says, Kol tefillah she'en have a kavanah in a tefillah. If you have a tefillah that doesn't have kavanah, it's not davening. V'imit palel, below kavanah. If you daven without kavanah, daven again. Hey. And then finally, he goes on for a few lines about, like this, about how important it is to have kavanah, and how if you didn't daven with kavanah, it's a problem. And then he says, Ketzad kavanah, he says it again. What is kavanah? How do you do it? She'ifnet libo mikol ha'machshavot. Yifanet libo. He's supposed to empty out his heart, his mind, from all other thoughts. V'yireh atzmo ki'ilu ha'med lifnei hashchina. And he has to see himself as though he's standing before davening. Before the Shekhinah. He has to see himself standing before the Shekhinah. Great. Like Reb Chaim said, you have to picture yourself that you're standing before God davening. Lefichach, therefore, tzarich leishev me'at kodem hatfilah. Therefore, a person is obligated to sit a bit before davening, kedei lechavein et libo, in order to get himself focused. V'achar kach yitpalel, and then he can daven b'nachal b'tachnunim, and he can daven nicely. It's interesting, the Rambam, in his how-to of kavanah, so he says what you're supposed to have when you're supposed to have kavanah, that you're standing before God and you're davening. So how do you do that? Get there early. Be there a few minutes before davening starts, to get yourself focused. So I want to add, I'm not sure this is either Reb Chaim's or the Rambam's intent, but I want to add a little thought of my own that connects the two ideas. The idea that you're standing before the Shekhinah, and how that ties into being early. You see, if I said to you, why do you come to davening in the morning? Well, it's davening, I have to daven. What's your intention? My intention is to stand before God and daven. Why were you late? Oh, you know. If you really viewed this experience as coming and standing before God, if you viewed it as an encounter with God in any way, forget about understanding the words. If you really take it seriously, if I have an appointment and I take it seriously, if you're supposed to meet someone somewhere, how irritating is it when they're late? What does it say to you when the person's late, when you're supposed to meet them? Thank you. This isn't really a dialogue, but thank you. What does it say to you? Thank you, Shai. They don't really care. And that's how we feel. We feel like we've been dissed when someone's late, when we're supposed to meet them somewhere. It's a lack of, it shows that we don't really take it that seriously. If something's really important, we get there on time. Come on, let's get there. I don't want to miss the first inning. Right? We want to get there on time. We want to. It's important. So by coming early, it's an interesting thing. I think when the Rambam says that that's part of kavanah, I don't think he just means it. I'd like to suggest that he doesn't just mean it as a preparation for kavanah, but it's actually part of the kavanah. Because what does the word kavanah mean? Intent. How do you show intent to stand before the Shekhinah? Well, by treating it as though it's really important, you're showing that you intend to stand before the Shekhinah. If you sort of mosey in, you either don't really care about the Shekhinah, or you care about it, but you don't really see yourself as standing before the Shekhinah, or somehow you're not really intending. I would say to you, I don't really believe you that you intend to stand before the Shekhinah, because any normal person who would intend to stand before the Shekhinah would be there on time. I think that's what the Rambam means. And it's also true, practically speaking. When you come to davening early, and early doesn't mean half an hour early. When you come to davening even 2 minutes early, enough time to get your tefillin on before they start, and you're sort of there, and you're going along with it, and the pacing of and you're in there, it is a different davening than even if you come 5 minutes later. Half the snooze button later. Even if you come just after they started, and while you're putting on that tefillin, they're already into Pesukah de Zimra a little bit. By the time you finish putting on that tefillin, they're already into the Halalukas, and then you're sort of like, it's already a different davening. It already feels different. It's a different experience. Kal v'chomer, if you walk in after Baruch Hu, it's just what's gained in getting there early, and what's the whole loss? That useless rolling around in bed that we just talked about? That's what you've lost? You've lost something that had no value anyway? The source for Tfilat Shachrit, according to the Gemara in Brachot Daf Chavav, there's a machloket there. Is the source for the davening the Korbanot Tmidim, or is the source the Avot? Probably we all learned in kindergarten or thereabouts that Avram established Shachrit, Yitzchak established Mincha, and Yaakov established Mariv. You learn that too? The pasuk that the Gemara in Brachot uses to say that Avram established Shachrit is in this week's parsha. Vayashkem Avraham baboker el hamakom asher amad sham et pnei Hashem. And Avram got up in the morning and went to the place where he had stood before Hashem. The pasuk appears right after Sodom and Amorah are destroyed. And Avram goes out onto the cliff, looks out and sees the smoke rising, and he's standing in the place where he had davened. Vayashkem Avraham baboker. That scene could just as easily take place without it being Avram getting up early in the morning. But how beautiful it is. The pasuk that Chazal choose to teach us that Avram established Shachrit is that he got up early in the morning, got out of bed early in the morning, and he went and he stood. And Chazal then say, Ein amida ela tefillah. For each one of the three tefillot, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, they pick a different verb. And for Avram, it's amidah. It says that that the word standing, when it says that Avram stood, it means that he davened. Now, what's peculiar about this is that there are many, many places in Chumash where Avram davens. There's numerous psukim of Avram actually davening, and this one isn't one of them. This is a pasuk about Avram walking out to the place where he had davened, and it doesn't even use the term daven. It says that he stood. Ein amida ela tefillah. The verb that Chazal use for the establishment of tefillat shachrit is standing. Standing up. Getting up. Standing up. Because to stand up, there's this mountain we have to climb to get up in the morning. And that is like getting up, putting those feet on the floor, standing up, getting out of bed. Ein amida ela tefillah. You can say that to yourself next time you're struggling with the snooze button, the madrich woke me, I don't want to get up, I want to roll over. Ein amida ela tefillah. The first step to tefillah is standing up, getting up, forcing yourself up and getting in there. And that itself is kavanah. Even if you don't understand a word you say. You took it seriously. You told God, I showed up for the appointment. I came on time. I cared. So that itself is a step forward in the relationship with Hashem. Now I'd like to give you 3 tips that I think could be an opening, 3 different openings to start working on your tefillah. Because again, I haven't dealt with what I started with, which is that tefillah is difficult. It's hard for us to relate to. It's hard to turn it into a spiritual experience. How many of us walk out of a Shacharis or a Mincha B'Mayra going like, I feel closer to God? It doesn't, let's be honest, it doesn't really happen. Maybe, okay, I don't know, there's some people here on a higher level than me, but it doesn't happen for me. Or on a regular, like a Tuesday morning Shacharis, that suddenly like I feel like my relationship to God has been enhanced this morning. So first of all, before I get to my 3 tips, it will happen if you're getting up and getting there early because you want to take the relationship seriously. Because you have a date for 7:30 and you want to be on time. That already is a statement that you take this relationship seriously and you actually believe that God is like really there and like you're supposed to, you have an appointment that you don't want to be late for. So that itself is a step. But I'm actually going to give you 3 suggestions, real actual suggestions that you could implement in your davening right away. And you could start with them, and these are things that I've tried in my life, and they've worked very, very well for me. And they could really start you on the path to having some more meaningful kavanah. Just 3 easy suggestions, and that'll be the end of the sikha. The first suggestion is to actually talk to God. And what I mean by that is, at the end of Shemona Esrei, in Elokai Nitzor, the tefillah that we say right at the end of Shemona Esrei, right before we take our 3 steps back, we say Elokai Nitzor l'shani meirav sfatami never mima. It's a beautiful tefillah. In fact, saying that in English would be very good for you also, just like looking at the English when you say just that particular, it's a very personal tefillah. But right before you say the second Yula Ratzon Refi, you say Yula Ratzon, Aseh Laman Yeminecha, Aseh Laman Kedushatecha, Aseh Laman Tortecha, Laman Yechatzuni Yidecha, Hoshia Mincha Va'aneni. Right there is a place that is, it's suggested in many books, and it is totally acceptable to add in your own tefillah about anything, in whatever language you want. It's one of the places that it's suggested that you add in your own tefillah. Whenever special tefillah will be added in, that's one place where personal tefillah are added. And one thing that I try to do every single time I say Shemona Esrei is when I get to that spot, I say in English, that's my mother tongue, I say in English 1 or 2 sentences to God. They might be thanking God for something particular in my life. They might be asking God for help with something. They might be just reflecting on something that was important in my life that, I really need help with, or whatever it is, or I'm concerned about. I will say 1 or 2 sentences to God in English at that point about something specific in my life. Something specific. And just do that. At first it'll feel awkward. It's like, but someone you know who's sick, heal them. You're struggling with a certain issue. God, please, help me get through this. Whatever it is. But at that spot, if you do that in English, and you add it in every time you say Shemona Esrei, it'll start to build on itself, and it'll spill over into the rest of your davening. That's one easy suggestion. If you try it, then even if you just try that, you'll see the results. Second suggestion is to get a hold of the book Pathway to Prayer. Very, very good book. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that book. Raise your hand if you've seen the book. A fair number of guys have. If you haven't, you should see the book. There are Pathway to Prayers for Shabbos, for Yom Tov, whatever, but even just the one for weekday, which I think I see a copy of right there. I want people to see what it is so they know it. This book here, Pathway to Prayer, is a fantastic book by this guy, Rabbi Meir Birnbaum. It's a translation and explanation of the Shemona Esrei with tips for having kavanah. And it's word by word with translation. And he also guides you through how to build this into having better kavanah. So if you actually follow, he has a system which he helps you build a better Shemona Esrei and build better kavanah. And so it's not, you're not taking on the whole mountain at once. You're going, and it's a great system. You're in yeshiva this year, you don't have a lot of other distractions, college, job, families, things you're going to have in the next 5, 10, 15, 120 years, whatever it is. You have less distractions now, you can really focus on your davening. You get a hold of this book and make it one of the projects that you have during the year, even if you don't use it for every Shemona Esrei. Like let's say you say, I'm going to do Pathway to Prayer for Ma'ariv every night. Ma'ariv will be my Pathway to Prayer too. And you sort of go through the system, read the first few pages, get into Pathway to Prayer. It's very, very helpful. So I highly recommend this book. Last suggestion, and it's actually lifted from Pathway to Prayer. It's very hard to have kavanah. We know that even those of us who every now and then you're like, okay, today I'm going to have kavanah, I'm going to say every word. And you go, and like the first couple words, the first couple sentences, you're going okay, maybe even the first whole paragraph, and then you get lost, and then you realize that you lost your kavanah along the way, and you get depressed. Oh my God, I forget it. Pick one bracha. Pick one bracha out of Shemona Esrei. That's your bracha that you say with kavanah. Okay, start with one bracha and just focus on that for a week, a month, whatever it is. That's the one bracha I say with kavanah. Pick one out that you relate to best of the 19 brachot in Shemona Esrei. Make it the one that you focus extra on, that you sort of like focus your concentration and get yourself, together to say with kavanah, and don't worry about the other ones. At some point later down the road, you'll be ready to add a second one. You add a second one. You know what I'm saying? And that way you can start to build towards having a better kavanah in your davening. Let's bring it all back full circle. Success in life, in yeshiva, in learning, in relationships, in jobs, whatever it is. Success is not, there's no get-rich-quick schemes. I mean, there are, that's the stories you hear about who win the lottery. That's not what life is really like. Life is, it's a grind. It's day-to-day. It's showing up. And there are good days and there are bad days. And in order to get through them, you need to remind yourself why you make decisions. You need to respond to the motivations that you started with, even on days where you're not feeling it. You need to be able to function tired and not let tired be an excuse not to function, because everyone's tired. And we need to eradicate the evil snooze buttons from our lives, now and forever.